Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucs. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and we'll see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. And as always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby.
Welcome to the Recher podcast. Recher here with you. Happy January 8th, 2025. There's literally like 5 days a year in the city of Tampa where you're like, no thanks, weather. I don't like this. And today is one of those 5 days. I'm wearing a hoodie. I got the heat on in the house here. I know there's a lot of people out there that woke up this morning like, this is why we moved from where we were living to Tampa, so we didn't have to deal with mornings like this. It doesn't get much worse than this, but again, you can count them on one hand. The days when you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh God, I don't want to deal with this cold today. But I know there's other things and there's other people around the country that are dealing with a lot colder weather than this. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere. And I know Dolan's already giving me grief already. You're from New York. I know. And that's the crazy thing about it, Dolan, is you could spend 2 weeks in New York and it could be in the teens and you're like, your body gets acclimated to it. But when you're not used to it here and then you have a day that's in the 30s and the 40s, you're like, no, I'm good on that. Corey Wallach, let's go. Appreciate you for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Every single like, every single share, every single contribution to the show is so pivotal. And I can't thank you guys enough. Lightning with a big 3-2 win against the Carolina Hurricanes last night. What a great game to be at there at Amalie Arena. A huge goal for Braden Point with 51.9 seconds left. We'll get into the Lightning at 1 o'clock. Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com, joins us. He'll join us every Wednesday at 1 p.m. You know, we always have the fire guests here on the program. At 12:10, Chris Russell will hop on from Team 980 up there in the nation's capital. He's going to give us the Washington perspective ahead of the matchup Sunday night between the Commanders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I cannot wait. I love some NFL playoffs. 12:30, Nick Cattles is going to join us from up in New England. The Nick Cattles Show, the Nick Cattles podcast. You got to go check him out. One of the loudest voices there in Boston when it comes to the Celtics, the Bruins, the Red Sox, but especially the Patriots. I don't want to hear from him. What does he think about the Patriots coaching search? Is it just a formality that Mike Vrabel is going to be that guy? Are they going to try to get Liam Cohen? No, I'm going to keep him away just like we did yesterday with Jamal St. Cyr in Jacksonville. You stay away from Liam Cohen. He's not going anywhere. Keep him here in the Tampa Bay area. If you missed anything from the first 2 days of the Recher podcast, it is on my YouTube channel at Recher10. That's how you can find it. But go to the JRecherPodcast.com as well. Started up the website and again on all social media platforms at Recher. And then Matt Matera from Pewter Report at 1:30. All things Buccaneers. We know right around this time, probably in the next half hour, an hour or so, we're going to hear from Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield over at the Evan Hell Training Center at One Buccaneer Place. What do they have to say as we inch closer to that super wild card matchup with Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders? First and foremost, definitely want to shout out everybody dealing with the wildfires out there in California, in Malibu. Just some of the scenes that we've seen on social media, the photos and the videos. It's just catastrophic, and your heart goes out to everybody out there. So, man, that's tough. It's tough. And again, you know, I know we were just kind of busting balls before about how cold it is, but it really puts things in perspective. Like, if the least I got to worry about today is putting my heat on and it being cold outside, I mean, that pales in comparison to people that are losing everything because of these wildfires. So our hearts and our prayers, our thoughts go to everybody out there on the West Coast that are dealing with those wildfires. And hopefully this is something that they can get under control, not just in the near term, but in the long term as well, because of these droughts. And it seems like every year we're seeing these videos of these families losing their homes because of the wildfires. God, with all the advances in technologies that we have, we can't figure out any way to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen. I don't know. That's way above my pay grade, but I really hope that that's something that gets rectified sooner rather than later. Shout out to David Terry, always chiming in as well. Jay Bird, those magic shoes you wear work last night. Points game winning goal was magical. You got that right. I was wearing some teal/turquoise joints. You got to go check those out on my social media after my Recher's rapid reaction. Shout out to Thaw and Bart Hill as well. I want to hear from you guys as well. This is something that my buddy James Donlin brought up. If you want your voice to be heard, if you have some questions, if you have some comments about the J Recher podcast, feel free. Get on over there right now, the jrecherpodcast.com, and there is a place that you can go. Just click on it where you can be heard. If you have questions, if you have comments, if there's certain things that you want to see on the show that you haven't seen yet and you want to be added, go on over there, the jrecherpodcast.com. Scroll down to the bottom and you'll be able to enter that right there. So trying to be very interactive on the program here. We're not going to take phone calls. I'm not going through that whole rigmarole, but I will take your text. I will take your emails, and then we'll read them here on the show every single weekday at noon. I'll be here with you on the J Recher podcast. A lot of people were clamoring for some local content. Let's talk some Tampa Bay sports. I am here for you. Shout out to Jeff Taylor. He's locked in, and hopefully you are as well. All right. We'll talk some Buccaneers football in a second. But first, I wanted to let you guys know something that came down about a half hour ago. American Athletic Conference Commissioner Tim Pernetti has announced that the late Amir Abdur-Rahim has been named honorary 2024-2025 American Men's Basketball Coach of the Year. His family is going to join Commissioner Pernetti at USF's February 6th home game against Temple for the presentation of the award. Go USFBulls.com. Go get your tickets right now. I'll be in attendance, and you should be too. The American also is going to donate $15,000, the amount of Amir's contracted bonus for winning the Coach of the Year honor, to the Future Foundation, a nonprofit organization that was close to Amir and his family's hearts. Also, the American's going to honor AAR by permanently naming another postseason men's basketball honor in his name. The Amir Abdur-Rahim Sportsmanship Award will be presented annually to the men's basketball student athlete who, as determined by the league's head coaches, best exemplifies the qualities of sportsmanship, fair play, and leadership. The impact of this man is still being felt months after he's passed on. And I was thinking about this before the show today, and I don't know if any coach in USF history has made a bigger impact than Amir Abdur-Rahim. I'll just say it. No coach in the history of USF athletics has made a bigger impact than Amir Abdur-Rahim. And he was here for one season. One season. It's still crazy to believe that he's not here, but my goodness, so instrumental to stoking the flame for basketball fans here in the Tampa Bay area. We're not huge basketball lovers. I'm not me. I love hoops, but here is not necessarily, I'd say, a basketball frenzy type of place, but Amir Abdur-Rahim and what that USF men's basketball team was able to do last year, they were able to galvanize the 813 and the 727. They were Tampa Bay's home for hoops. And now he's getting these awards posthumously. It's remarkable and well-deserved. And again, no coach in the history of USF athletics has made a bigger impact than Amir Abdur-Rahim. And it's still wild to say that he's been here, that he was only here for one season. We're going to bring this guy in a little bit early because I know he's got a show to get ready for. Our guy from Team 980 up there in the nation's capital, WrestleMania himself, Chris Russell. Chris, what's up, brother? How are you?
Jay, man, how are you? What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us. How's the weather up there?
Well, it's less than fun. I'm.
People are complaining. The reason why I ask is because people are bitching and moaning here. I'm checking the official. They're saying it's 54, but it's colder down here. Feels like 45. People losing their mind. I'm wearing a hoodie today. It's a different world down here in Tampa.
Well, yeah, you know that. As soon as you move down to Tampa or Orlando, and I have, I have still a lot of family in the Kissimmee St. Cloud area, so more Central Florida, obviously away from you guys. they always used to laugh at, the grandmothers and grandfathers that used to move down to Florida, and they would be cold when it would be like 75 degrees, right? As soon as you live in that for an extended period of time, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, I don't know, whatever it is. And maybe it's different for everybody. Your body gets used to it. Your body adjusts to it. And yes, it's still hot as hell and still humid as you know what. But when it drops below like 65, people start to get a little cranky because they're like, wait, what is this? It's supposed to be 85 degrees at night, not 65 degrees or not 55 degrees at night or whatever it is. Right. So I totally get it. I totally get it. Now, up here, we got freaking out. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like everybody, of course, is used, generally coming from, to Florida from not everybody, but a lot of people from the Northeast and, central part of the country where it's a lot colder and icier and all that stuff. I mean, I've lived in so many damn climates that nothing really phases me. I've lived in Fort Lauderdale for a year. I've been to Florida, so many times I can't even count. I've lived on Long Island. I've lived in Buffalo. I lived in Chicago. I lived in Washington, D.C. I've lived in Las Vegas, where I used to. You were talking about hoops and what coach meant, to the Tampa Bay area. I used to play hoops at a noon. Back when I was a younger dude, like 26, 27 years old, 110 degrees, and you could actually do it because guess what? That humidity that everybody knows in Florida wasn't such a big factor out there.
Yeah, it's a lot different. 100 degrees in different parts of the country. I remember going to Texas one time for a baseball tournament, and they were like, it was 100. And I was like, it just felt like there was a lamp like right here by my head. Right. The humidity wasn't terrible like we're used to in the Tampa Bay area, but it was like the sun was right here. It was like, please go away. We don't want to deal with you anymore.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this big game on Sunday. It's so crazy that the first game of the regular season for both of these teams is now the first game in the postseason. And
that was the last time I saw you.
I know. It's pretty wild. And, let's just start where everybody wants to start, and that's Jayden Daniels. I mean, the kid's been incredible. I love the kid's moxie. And correct me if I'm wrong, but, obviously I don't watch every single Washington game, but I saw early on in the season, he was like, hey, I could take these hits. But then as the year went on, he was like, I'm still going to run, but I'm going to take a little bit more of the Russell Wilson approach of let me get the hell out of bounds because I don't want to be dealing with any kind of rib injuries and have Marcus Mariota playing football.
Well, and you said it in a nutshell. I mean, he did have a rib injury, and that's because he took like an awkward tumble on a 47-yard run. I think it was the first play of the game against the Carolina Panthers in right around October 20th, somewhere in there. And maybe it was October 22nd, whatever the date was. It was week 7, I want to say, of the NFL season, and he played like 6 or 7 more plays after that, and then he got, they took him out because he was kind of wincing in pain, and everybody thought, oh gosh, what is going on here? And then he returned the next week, and then the Hail Mary to the Bears, which everybody, even if you're didn't watch the Commanders much this year, remembers that play. Exactly. And then after that, it was kind of like, all right. He was not super sharp is what I would describe it. And they kept saying, no, he's fine. And they weren't listing him on the injury report after the initial week of the season, but they were not running him by design. He was not, again, what I would call super sharp in terms of his accuracy. You could see that they were trying to kind of, I don't know, baby him is not the right word. So I want to be careful about what I said, but massage him, if you will, through it. Hey, do more with your eyes, do more with your brain, do more with your football IQ than your athleticism. I think what we saw in Tampa in week 1, if you remember, Jay, which I know you remember, is Todd obviously has his blitz pressure packages, and Tampa's defense is going to get after you, and especially a rookie quarterback. And Jayden was able to not figure it out through the air with his arm and as a passer, but he was able to break them down with several key escapes and runs. And I think he had 16 runs for, I want to say, about 112 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. But he did take the one nasty shot, if you remember, right around the 5-yard line, in which his helmet popped popped off, and then his helmet popped off the second time. So to me, I say all of this to say, yes, your sense is right. Like the other day, he ran out of or he stepped out of bounds when he could have thrown, he could have tried to pass, he could have tried to run for it. He just stepped out of bounds. I didn't hate that because my biggest thing, my number one thing, for any quarterback that I have is please don't get hurt, because you know, you could talk about this next man up crap all you want. Not every team is built to next man up where a guy is the same talent level and ability level as the guy that they're replacing.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, you could say that about, I think, other sports but you know this, I mean, following the Caps and following hockey too. Like if your starting quarterback or your starting goalie comes down or goes down and he's a really, really great player, I don't care who you have behind him. There's a good chance that there's going to be a precipitous drop off. Like if Ovi goes that right. I mean, you saw it from the years where
Ovi went down. Yeah. For 5 weeks,
down, they're able to bounce back. They're able to, you know, kind of stay up there. But, you know, years past when, like, let's say Ole the goalie goes down or some of the other goalies that they've had, you know, when the Caps won the cup, those guys go down. You know, then you start looking around. Same thing with Vasilevsky with the Lightning. He goes down. Like no matter who, we didn't have him for 20 games last year. And you're not talking about replacing that guy. You're talking about treading water. And that, regardless of the next man up mentality, I don't think that's necessary. I'm with you 100%. People are going to be worried about Jaden Daniels. They're going to be worried about Terry McLaurin. What is another aspect of the recipe for success for Washington on the offensive side of the ball that the Buccaneers have to be concerned about?
Concerned about, I would say, Zach Ertz, especially in the red zone. That has been, you know, it was a little bit slow to develop that connection, not in terms of frequency or volume early on, but it was more like it wasn't connecting and it wasn't hitting and it wasn't in rhythm in the red zone. But I think he's got 6 out of the last 7 games or something like that. He didn't, you know, he scored a touchdown on Sunday from Marcus Mariota, not from Jaden Daniels, because Daniels was pulled at half with what they eventually called mild leg soreness, and Mariota kind of threw one, you know, from the, I think, 6-yard line or whatever it was, and it was a little bit behind him, and Zach made a nice adjustment. Zach has been really good second half of the year, red zone and frequency and volume, 5-6 carries, you know, targets, maybe 7, kind of depending on the game, and for the most part, he'll be reliable with his hands. But again, he's been really, really, really good in the red zone the second half of the year. So I would say that's number one outside of Terry McLaurin, who you mentioned already. And Terry's been way better in the red zone this year than he has been in years past. And everybody attributes it to the quarterback, but it's also Terry working his ass off to get open and to create separation and to be a better hands catcher, as we saw on that game-winning touchdown with 2 seconds left from Mariota on Sunday in Dallas. And I would say one other thing, you know, if you're kind of looking for like a, you know, a wild card, if you will, watch out for De'Ami Brown, the 4th-year receiver out of North Carolina. He's got speed to kill, Jay, and they use him on a lot of screens and a lot of quick game stuff, but he has the ability to take the lid off, and they've only really done it once this year against Philadelphia, and they hit it for 50 yards in stride a couple of weeks ago. And then he got hurt, and he was out the next week, and then last week it was kind of like, okay, get him back in the game, whatever. Watch out for that, especially against this injury-riddled, depleted Bucs secondary.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, we saw what Zacchaeus was able to do against his old team, and it was kind of great to be able to watch that game on Sunday Night Football, and everybody in the Tampa Bay area is rooting for Washington. Like, please take care of business against the Falcons, please. And Zacchaeus was like, oh, yeah, you remember me, Atlanta? And he was able to do the job. So that was what a back-and-forth battle that was.
And OZ has been great too. The problem with OZ is his hands. And if anybody saw the trick play that they ran and Cliff Kingsbury dialed up, which included both De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zacchaeus, De'Ami Brown kind of like got a little pitch toss to him on motion on like an end around sweep, and then stopped and cocked his arm and threw a bomb. And it was a great pass, and it should have been a long touchdown. And Olamide Zacchaeus just dropped it. Now, again, if he catches it, it's a completely different context game, what have you. And also, this isn't kind of the narrative that it is, but because of that, because of other things, OZ, as people call him up here, or Oz, some people call him, you know, he's the wild card in wild card weekend because we don't know what to expect. He's always open. He gets him. He's tough. He's physical. He can hurt you guys, but can he catch? And that's been a problem for him, quite honestly, throughout the year.
Chris, tell me about this running game. I know last year the story of Brian Robinson's going to go down. It's probably one of the better stories. Him coming out to the field to many men by 50 said. It's want to talk about a poetic type of debut and poetic initial start to his career. What about him? What about the running game? What should the Buccaneers be concerned of when it comes to outside of Jaden Daniels and the rushing attack?
So it's the number one question that I have going into the week. They have not had a good natural running game, meaning outside of the quarterbacks, in 5 weeks. At the start of this 5-game winning streak, they tore apart Tennessee in a good defensive line. They tore apart Tennessee, and Brian Robinson keyed that excellent blocking. It was the game right before their late season bye in December, and they ran for 267 yards. And yes, Jaden Daniels was a part of that, but he wasn't a huge part of it. It was, the natural running game. Since then, there's been virtually nothing outside of a sprinkle and a dose from Chris Rodriguez, who's a second-year back from Kentucky, who's been on and off the roster. Last week, they had 4 running backs active for the first time this year in Dallas, and that was partially because Austin Eckler was coming back from IR, and he was on a pitch count. So I don't know what they're going to do this week. My guess, and this is just my guess, is they stay with the 4 backs and, maybe go one less receiver like a KJ Osborne, who they signed a couple of weeks ago. That would be my guess, but there's some other roster machinations going on, so it could very well be 3. My question is everybody knows how good and how dominant Vita Vea is. Can they run to the edges, which they weren't able to do in week 1 at Raymond James? And I need to see more toss pitches, toss cracks, getting out on the perimeter, and certainly Austin Eckler's a part of that, but also Brian Robinson can do that. He can break tackles and get after it downhill after contact, but for whatever reason, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's him being banged up, and he's been banged up a bunch throughout the year, whether it's a combination of all of that, it just hasn't worked the way they need it to work, and my fear is with Vita Vea staring right at them, that they're going to go, no, this ain't for us, dog. And we're just going to throw 50 times on Sunday night and take our chances that way.
Yeah. Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey is another guy, the second-year player out of Pittsburgh, he's just coming into his own. It's weird. The Buccaneers, their pass rush from the outside linebacker position hasn't been great. They get their sacks pretty much from everybody. Back. Shaq Barrett coming back. I think that'll be interesting to see what Shaq's impact is going to be, because now it's just kind of an emotional lift. I don't know how many plays he's going to play. But guys like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who doesn't do a great job rushing the passer, he's decent when it comes to run defense. Yaya Diaby coming into his own as a pass rusher. These guys are good at rush defense. I'm surprised.
I think that's the guy that, like Commanders fans don't know about. They know about Vita Vea. And Vita Vea, as you guys know, when he's healthy and when he's on the field, can not only stop the run and engulf the run, but he can collapse the pocket. I think he's got 7.5 sacks or whatever it is, this year, and he can destroy the integrity of everything. And by the way, Tyler Biadasz, the Commander starting center, missed last week. He's been banged up all throughout the second half. They are a dramatically different offensive line with him or without him. Period. End of story. He is their number one, key guy, and especially this week against Vea. But you mentioned Yaya Diaby. I mean, their pass rush pressure and the pass rush and getting home has been a problem. And this is one area that I think Jaden has struggled a little bit with. I want to be careful again. I don't want to say a lot, but he has struggled a little bit with. Jay, when I go back and I watch the tape, and I'm not a coach, I'm not a scout, I'm not anything. All I know is I can plug in a sack, right? And I can see the all 22, and I can say, okay, I don't know exactly the progression, but he should have been able to see this. He should have been able to get the ball to here before getting dump trucked. And that's been a little bit of a problem for Jaden Daniels, especially in the second half of the season, for whatever reason. And that is an area that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I fully expect them to be able to take advantage of.
Yeah, one thing that I look at when it comes to Jaden Daniels is you can't be this good as a rookie if you don't have that kind of snap and clear mentality. You make a mistake, you keep on going. But I don't look at a kind of a combination or a multitude of issues. I'm just looking at that one throw. I'm looking at that one throw from Jaden Daniels when he tries to do maybe a little bit too much. Maybe he tries to prove, just like we saw with Lamar Jackson against the Chiefs last year. Sometimes these guys that have that capability to run, sometimes they almost want to prove it a little bit too much that they can stay in the pocket to throw. So I'll be interested to see how he kind of rationalizes that, in his own mental. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the heavyweight matchup. A lot of people in the Tampa Bay area want to see this because these two guys clearly don't like each other. Marshawn Lattimore played so many years with the New Orleans Saints. The dislike between him and Mike Evans is something that fans of the Saints and fans of the Buccaneers certainly know. I don't know if the Commanders fan base really understands this type of vitriol between these two guys. What do you expect to see from this matchup? I know he's missed a bunch of time due to injury. How close to 100% is he going to be? And what do you expect to see from that clash?
All right. So it's Wednesday as we're discussing. They're not even on the practice field here yet. So we'll get a further update, obviously, today. And if he's limited or if he's full go, of course, that's a really good sign, right? They've kept him out the last 2 weeks against Atlanta and against Dallas. That was expected. That was understood. He re-aggravated the hamstring that he hurt in New Orleans, which caused him to be deactivated before his final game and then ultimately traded because things fell out in New Orleans. And then even when he came here, everybody was like, oh, he'll be fine. He'll snap to it. He's just out of New Orleans, so he'll be happy. And he missed the first 5 weeks, So this has been a problem for Marshawn Lattimore the last couple of years. He has not been able to stay healthy, frequent injuries. And I know Mike Evans obviously had an injury earlier this year, but I don't know, maybe you would disagree. Mike doesn't look very different to me since he's come back, right? So I think Mike Evans has the natural advantage, and I'm assuming that Marshawn Lattimore is going to play. I think Mike Evans has the natural advantage. I know statistics will tell us in head-to-head matchups that Marshawn Lattimore has had a pretty good success rate against Mike, and Mike has had his, and so on and so forth. I got to be honest with you, Jay. I would trust me. This is me, somebody who covers the Commanders, and maybe it's because I'm a little skeptical of, again, Lattimore at this point. I would trust Mike Evans more than I would trust Marshawn Lattimore. And here's another key area. Marshawn Lattimore in the one full no, I'm sorry. It wasn't the one full game he played. That was against New Orleans, no targets, no nothing. But they suck. Against Philadelphia and A.J. Brown. 3 defensive pass interference penalties, all in the third quarter. Plus, he got beat on a slant for a touchdown. Plus, he got beat for a long one, and all by A.J. Brown. Now, A.J. Brown, who does his build obviously resemble, right? I mean, there's some similarities between him and Mike Evans, right? So whether it's true defensive pass interference or not, it could be holding, it could be illegal contact. Right. I really feel this. I think Marshawn is going to struggle on Sunday night to kind of get back on the bicycle, and I think that's a bit – I want to say I think that's an advantage for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I would be stunned if Liam Cohen doesn't take advantage of that early on. If Marshawn's out of there, I would target Mike on a go route or on a double move, first play, first series of the game, and say, okay, we want to see how mentally and physically ready you are to play in this game.
Team 980's Chris Russell from up there in the nation's capital, up there in D.C. I'll be joining his program on Friday at 2:30. I know you got to get ready for your show. You're on at 1 o'clock. Thanks so much for your time, my partner. Always good to catch up. Are you going to be here Sunday?
Well, so I want to be, but the weather is playing a little helter-skelter, and you know this, right? If I ain't back by 1 o'clock on Monday, the day after, win or lose, the biggest game of the year, that's right. A little problematic in what we do, right? So that takes first priority. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure out if I can get Santa Claus or somebody, and the reindeer to take me down to Tampa and bring me back by 12:30 or so on Monday afternoon. Right. I'm still working on that, Jay. If I'm not, I'm going to be watching the game just like everybody else on NBC, and I'll be there in spirit. And man, will I miss the bleep out of that press box. All of you guys, because I love all of you, and Pahanic over at the Bucs, my guy Brad Berlin, the head equipment manager, another one of my dudes, and the Bananas Foster at halftime too.
Yeah,
I mean, killing me, man, just killing me.
Well, hopefully it all works out for you, Chris. And again, I'll talk to you on Friday. Thank you so much for your time today, man. Enjoy the game Sunday.
Sounds good, brother. I appreciate you as always.
All right, pal. The one and only Chris Russell from the team. 980 up there in DC. Great chat there. Man, that matchup between Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans, that's a juicy one. I mean, you don't have many head-to-head battles like that in the National Football League. But those two guys clearly don't like each other. If you don't believe me, go to YouTube. Not right now, after the show, and just put in Marshawn Lattimore versus Mike Evans. All right, we're going to keep the NFL talk going, and we're going to go up to New England and talk to our guy, Nick Cattles, the Nick Cattle Show. My brother, it's been so good to see your journey. The Sacramento Kings have gone to crap since you left there. Back doing your thing. Congratulations on all your success, talking all things Boston sports. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. How are things, my man?
Things are good, man. It's good to see you. Good to hear from you last night. And happy to be here to talk about the Patriots debacle and this head coach search. And now Bill Belichick, I guess, maybe going to the Raiders. I don't know what's happening, Jay.
Bro, I mean, Sunday is like just like Gerard Mayo, right? Like we knew that it was okay. Well, it's not looking too good. And there was a lot more questions than answers. And then it's like, yeah, we're not even going to wait. We're not even going to wait till the end of the day. Like, first off, shocked that were you surprised at all that he got fired? And I guess secondly, were you surprised that he got fired in that fashion?
Wasn't surprised that he got fired by the time he got fired. I was going to be surprised if he got fired, let's say later in the week, heading into the weekend. But then as soon as it went like 72 hours, Jay, and all the smoke was just surrounding Mayo and, you know, is he safe? Is he not safe? The fact that nobody, not a single solitary person locally or nationally came out and said that he was safe before that game on Sunday, that's when I started to feel like he could be gone. And then Adam Schefter on ESPN on Sunday morning leaning out. Look, Schefter has a history with the Patriots. He tends to get some inside stories from the Patriots. Some believe that he's got some friends in ownership here. So as soon as I saw that, I felt like, all right, I'll be a lot less surprised if he's gone. Being fired within 90 minutes of the game, I was surprised by that. I thought Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft would give him a chance to try to save his own job, save himself and have a meeting. That's usually what they do. They like to have meetings, but they decided that wasn't going to be the case, and they cut the cord. So, yeah, I was surprised it was done that quickly on Sunday.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy too, Nick, when you look at what they were trying to do post-Belichick, right? Try to have a plan. Yeah, when you're and we see this with Jerry Jones. When you're a guy as an owner and you get pretty much anything you want in your life, you're a billionaire and you've had success with your team, and you look at Robert Kraft and the amount of success that the New England Patriots have been able to have, you're very meticulous in going, all right, well, we got to change, but we got to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row. And Gerard Mayo was a guy that was, all right, this is a guy, an in-house guy, played for us. Where did it go wrong in just 1 year where they were so quick to make that decision? I mean, I know the answers we might be here all day, but it's kind of crazy because you look at the rookie quarterback too with Drake May, and you say to yourself, hey man, he had some good moments. And usually when, you can look at a coach with a young quarterback, and if it goes off the rails and he sucks all the way, you're like, all right, well, we've invested a high pick into this guy. We want to make sure we have the right coach. But, I watched some Drake May this year. I'm like, oh, the kid's got some talent. So I guess where did it go wrong? Because it's probably not just one thing that Gerard Mayo did. Seems like there was just kind of a litany of decisions that have kind of led to his ultimate demise.
Yeah, where did it go wrong? I guess I'd give you one word: everywhere. I think it went wrong everywhere, Jay. First of all, on the field, the team didn't get better. I said this to put it simply: their best game of the season was Week 1. And that's never a good sign for a coach. Right. When you reach the pinnacle in Week 1 against a team in Cincinnati that historically with Zach Taylor starts off slowly, not a great sign, right? So on the field, there were questions, right? Lack of in-game adjustments, bad clock management, bad timeout usage, players that had been good in prior years regressing, young guys, aside from Drake May, not developing. I mean, Jalen Polk, who was a second-round pick, he was seen as a plug-and-play guy. Everybody thought that he would at least contribute. He had a completely awful season this year. Javon Baker, fourth-round pick, couldn't get on the field at wide receiver. So they had player development issues, but their veterans also regressed at the same time, which makes you look at the coaching. There were a number of games that they were just unprepared. And I think the last month of the season shined a light on that. They came off the bye. They had a miserable showing against Arizona, just completely unprepared, completely outcoached off a bye, which is inexcusable. And then they got humiliated at home by the Chargers in the penultimate game of the season. Last week of the season, for all intents and purposes, I don't think that was going to weigh in any kind of way on Kraft's mind of keeping Mayo or not, because everybody knew that Buffalo already had the second seed. New England was playing for the first pick. Buffalo was trying to keep New England from getting that first pick. So, week 18 didn't mean much, really. So that was the on-the-field stuff, Jay. Drake May did get better. I think a lot of people look at that as Alex Van Pelt and Ben McAdoo, the offensive staff working with him. Another issue, by the way, on the field was defensively. I mean, they just dropped like a stone. They fell off a cliff precipitously. Last year, even without Christian Gonzalez for the vast majority of the season, without Matthew Judon for the vast majority of the season, they were still a top 10 defense in DVOA, that analytic. This year they were like 30th, 31st. I mean, their defense, even though they lost, Juwan Bentley and traded Judon, we're not talking about a team that slightly regressed defensively. They fell off the cliff, and that's supposed to be Gerard Mayo's side of the football. His experience is on that side of the ball. He hand-selected DeMarcus Covington to promote him to defensive coordinator. Covington had a brutal year. And then on top of all that, the off-the-field stuff. He kept putting his foot in his mouth with the media. He would say dumb things and walk it back on Monday morning all the time. I called it, Mayo's moonwalk on Monday mornings. He would go out there and he'd backtrack immediately and apologize for something he said. There was a weird situation before the Chargers game where he told local radio, 98.5, the place I work at, he told 98.5 in the pregame that Ramondre Stevenson was going to not start. It was going to be Antonio Gibson. He told the TV crew the Friday before that game in the production meeting that Gibson was going to start because he wanted to send a message to the team about, discipline, taking care of the football, and accountability. And what do you know? Game starts. Ramondre Stevenson is out there starting. And, according to a story today in The Athletic from Chad Graff, no one really knew why that Mayo backtracked and decided to start Ramondre after all week saying he was not going to start that game. And there's just, lack of discipline. Jelani Tavai, a linebacker, came out and he went after the fans and said, pretty much that's not your place to boo people. And apparently Mayo had a big team meeting with the guys after Tavai said that on the radio. And Mayo told them, look, this is what you got to say when you're asked about the fans. And after that meeting, Tavai doubled down and made it even worse when he was asked by the media, which makes, are they even listening to the guy?
Right. Tuning them out.
It was just an absolute disaster from the beginning. It was a debacle. It was a circus. By week 17, that Chargers game, it was Martin and Bailey.
That's you want to talk about everything. Holy smokes, man. You're right. And you mentioned Jalen Polk, and I remember being in training camp this year with two of his teammates at Washington with Jalen McMillan and Devin Culp. And I remember talking to Jalen McMillan, who's gotten better and better as the year has gone on with the absence of Chris Godwin. And he goes, watch out for my guy, JP. He's going to do his thing up there with Drake May. And I was like, okay, and he told me that before he walked into training camp. So I was keeping an eye on Jalen Polk, and I was surprised. I even drafted him, I think, in fantasy as a kind of a stash guy because, as you said, I think that was kind of the national inclination that this guy was going to be a plug and play. And you see Jalen McMillan, I mean, Mike Evans is speaking admirably about him, and he was the third receiver taken out of Washington behind Roma Dunze and Jalen Polk, and he was a plug and play kind of guy. He was a guy that didn't contribute as much last year as he did 2 years ago due to injury. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a guy that Washington contingent that we've certainly kept an eye on here because there is so many Washington players like Vita Vea and Joe Tryon-Shrinkin, as I mentioned, Culp and Polk here with the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Jalen Polk thing is mystifying. I liked him. I watched him a decent amount at Washington, probably at least a handful of times his last year there because, obviously I love college football. I was watching Penix and Adunze and that offense. It was a lot of fun to watch. And I thought he would have 45, 50 catches, 500 yards. And
standard rookie year.
Yeah, and full of touchdowns. And he was invisible. I mean, after the first couple games, I think he finished with like 12 catches. I mean, he was absolutely invisible. And even worse, Jay, the focus wasn't there. He was called for a number of penalties, false starts, holding calls. His route running just was not there. He'd end up in the same spot as other receivers. So it just looked like he totally lost focus, and that mentally he wasn't completely into things. And then he went on social media and he posted some things like, a picture of a black sheep amongst white sheep and, just a lot of stuff, which was surprising because the book on Polk was great hands, contested catch guy, but also, can do a lot of things on the football field. He was Mr. Dependable on the field. And he was also seen as Mr. Dependable off the field. Never really said anything bad, was seen as like an ultimate character guy. And it just went off the rails quick with him in his rookie season. And I don't know what that is. I said this on the radio a week or two ago. I don't know where the blame pie is on that. Some of it absolutely has to be on Polk himself. I'm sure some of it might be on Elliott Wolf, who drafted him. Maybe it was a bad evaluation, but also coaching. Tyler Hughes, his coach, was with him in Washington, but he has never been a positional coach beyond junior college. I mean, this guy is just completely out of his league. So how much of it had to do with coaching? I think that's a legitimate question with this team, because one thing about Mayo, Jay, that I questioned from the jump, he didn't have a Rolodex. All these coaches, they come in and they have their list of guys that they've worked with, they know they want to bring in. Mayo played for the Patriots. After playing for the Patriots, he was in New England, working here in New England. Then he went on Belichick's coaching staff. He never really made any kind of, jump, so to speak, within the coaching staff beyond, some game planning stuff with Steve Belichick, who did a really good job at Washington this year as their DC. So he didn't have a Rolodex, and he really didn't do anything to change that. He didn't go outside of New England. He didn't talk to a lot of people outside of New England within the game. So this coaching staff underneath him was just completely inexperienced in the roles that they had for the most part. And it's because Gerard didn't really have anybody aside from his guy Covington and the guys that were on the staff already in New England to choose from. So again, top on down, it was a mess.
So tell me if I'm wrong here, because I've been saying this the last couple of days. I don't think that the New England Patriots make that move after one season so abruptly, so quickly after the season, if they don't have a firm grasp on who they ideally want to be the next head coach there. I think it makes all the sense in the world to have Mike Vrabel as the next head coach of the New England Patriots, because all things that you just said, he already has done in Tennessee. He has the experience of talking to different guys around the league. He's got relationships that permeate throughout the National Football League. I think it's the perfect marriage. I think it's part of the reason why they were so swift in making the move. So Vrabel didn't possibly go to the Jets or some other place. What say you about the possibility and the likelihood that Mike Vrabel is that next guy for the Crafts?
I wanted Vrabel last year. I would have picked Vrabel over Mayo. The problem was Robert Kraft made a huge mistake by putting a succession language in the contract of Mayo, which pretty much made it a guarantee that he was going to be the next head coach as soon as Belichick was gone. So that was the first mistake that really created this entire mess. So they really didn't have a chance to go get Vrabel last year. I think they would have been very interested in Vrabel last year. I think he probably would have been the head coach of this football team right now if it weren't for that language in Mayo's contract. And I think, look, if you're asking me, I would be absolutely shocked if Mike Vrabel is not the head coach of this football team by the end of the week. I would be.
Agree. I said the same thing on Monday. I said by this time Friday, I'd be shocked if Mike Vrabel wasn't the coach of the Patriots.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at the process, right? You look at what the Patriots have done. You've got the Saints, you've got the Jets, you've got the Raiders, you've got these teams with head coach openings, and they have a wide, big, large umbrella, right, of people they're interviewing. They're interviewing this guy, they're interviewing that guy. The Patriots have interviewed Pep Hamilton, who has not been in the league since 2022. They've interviewed Byron Leftwich, who has not been in the league since 2022.
You don't want him.
And by the way, it's check when it comes to the Rooney Rule with that, which I don't think is by any mistake.
Right.
And they're going to have, so far that we know, two other guys. It's Ben Johnson and it's Mike Vrabel, the two hot candidates in this cycle. So they're not adding any more interviews, which tells me the two guys you've interviewed already, they have no chance of being the head coach. So it comes down to Johnson or Vrabel, and just the way the things have been laid out. And as you said, the fact that you fire Mayo when you do, because Vrabel can personally meet with teams right now, so he has a chance. I mean, if he goes into, for example, Chicago today and he knocks their socks off and they say, we're going to give you everything, he could be the Bears head coach right now.
Right.
So the Patriots moving so quickly from Mayo and moving through the Hamilton Leftwich interviews in one single day, and only interviewing 2 other guys, and Mike Vrabel is one of those guys, I think you can pick up what I'm putting down. I think it's pretty obvious that at least they feel like they've got Mike Vrabel in the back pocket if that's the way they want to go with it.
Yeah, I feel a lot better about what I said earlier this week, knowing that you just said the same exact thing. It just, I mean, I think the writing is on the wall. Trust me, the whole Byron Leftwich thing. And it was funny because I was talking to my buddy Jamal St. Cyr from Jacksonville yesterday when we were talking about Byron Leftwich, because he was, all the words were that he was going to take that job. And you want to talk about bad press conferences, go back to his last year as the offensive coordinator, where he's pretty much arguing with the local media about this isn't fantasy football. And we weren't giving him opinions about the running game. They were 32nd in the league, right? I mean, it wasn't something we were making up. You guys are struggling running the football. Well, we're not really struggling.
Right.
You're 32nd in the league, Byron. Like, nobody was trying to insult the guy, and we want to see him do well. But, I mean, it says a lot that he was struggling with the media. Marcus Freeman wanted nothing to do with him at Notre Dame. He offered his services. He's like, no, we're good. He's out of football. And then they're like, oh, he's interviewing for the Patriots job. I'm like, there's no way he's going to be the coach there.
No.
And I don't think in the spirit of I understand the Rooney Rule, right? And I understand trying to get minorities the opportunity to get these opportunities that they haven't gotten in the past. But an interview like that with 2 guys that haven't been in the game the last couple of years, like, I don't really think that's the spirit of the rule, right?
Oh,
and
it's ridiculous.
They have their eyes, on Mike Vrabel, and I'm interested to see if the Rooney Rule gets adjusted over the next couple of years, because at the end of the day, like, okay, you could argue that the interview process is a great experience for those guys, right? It's never a bad thing to interview for a job, but you just wonder if it ever goes down the road of like being insulting, right? Like, we're just interviewing you because you're, like, as you alluded to, it's checking a box. And again, I don't think that's an opinion. I think it's a fact. Like, there's no way you're going with either one of those guys over Ben Johnson, who's the hottest candidate right now, the OC of the most creative offense in football, and a guy, Mike Vrabel, who is like a hand in a glove fit for the team that he was so successful with during his playing days, who had a great, coaching tenure there with the Tennessee Titans. And he clearly didn't have as much talent as I think he could in New England over time. I didn't hear you mention the name Liam Cohen, and as the offense coordinator of the Buccaneers, people are so worried here in the Bay that he's going to leave. Obviously, we saw Dave Canales leave after 1 year to go take the Carolina job, but again, he was 32nd in rushing too. And Liam Cohen and his offense makes Baker good for the second straight year, something he's never done in his career. The rushing attack is 4th in the league now. And the development, you said that the lack of development for a guy like Jalen Polk, you look at Jalen McMillan. I mean, it's amazing what he was able to do last week on 4th and 8 and the touchdown grab with incredible footwork. Any surprise that Liam Cohen, a guy that's a UMass, Rhode Island, grew up a Patriots fan guy, didn't get a sniff because he is, on the list for the Jaguars, and I know there's other teams that are interested in him.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've obviously kept my eye on Liam Cohen because he's a Rhode Island guy. I'm a Rhode Island guy.
You would love him, bro. He's the man. He's just so down there. And but sorry, I'm going to let you answer, but
that's all good.
I also wonder if the Mike Vrabel thing doesn't have something to do with that. Like, if they were really trying to cast a wide net, like, hey,
right,
because we don't every year that top offensive coordinator doesn't, only goes to one team, or like we saw with last year, Ben Johnson, he stayed with the Lions. So if the Patriots were really unsure of whether Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel was going to be the guy, I think Liam Cohen is kind of a natural like option C at the very worst.
Yeah, look, if you're asking me, I would have interviewed him. I would have had him as part of the process, no doubt about it. Unequivocally, I think he's an interesting name. I don't know if they would have ultimately pulled the trigger, because I think a big part of this is Kraft is very shaky looking at a first-time head coach, which is another reason why I think it's going to be Vrabel after going through the Mayo situation. I don't think he wants to take another shot at a guy who hasn't done the job, because if it fails, oh boy, then you went from Belichick to fail. So I think that's why ultimately the list is so small. But if you're interviewing Ben Johnson, you should interview Liam Cohen. I mean, I know Johnson had 3 years in Detroit. I've got questions about Johnson. Cohen's done a great job, man. I mean, look, you lose Mike Evans for what was it, a month at least this season due to the hammy. You lose Chris Godwin. I mean, you lost your top 2 receivers, and he was able to kind of figure some things out. And I think you look at the development and the production from a McMillan, where he's jumped the last 6 or 7 weeks. He's given you, 4 or 5 catches. That catch last weekend, you're right, was just tremendous, tapping them toes and getting them in the end zone. You look at a guy like Bucky Irving, who's fun and explosive, a young player. So I think he's done a great job, and I would not be surprised whatsoever if he is gone within the next year. He might not get it this time around, but I think you just look at the overall process, Jay, or lack thereof. I mean, even if you want to go back to the minority coaching thing, the reason why I say is checking the boxes is because you have plenty of minority coaches out there that are deserved of having an interview. And you look at Robert Saleh, you look at Aaron Glenn, you look at Anthony Weaver from Miami. There's a number of guys that you can look at that are currently in the NFL right now. And I know some of them can't do, you can't do in-person interviews, but if you're having a serious process here, you're on a Zoom, you're on the phone, you're talking to those guys to at least get an idea of what they bring to the table. Brian Flores, who was here with the Patriots, who has a connection with the Crafts. So the fact that they're not even talking to Flores and Glenn and some of those other guys, again, I think it tells you where this thing is headed. If Vrabel backs out, something happens there. I mean, maybe they start the process over again, but I think this is Johnson or Vrabel and heavily lean towards Vrabel.
Yeah, and what you said about Gerard Mayo before about the lack of kind of like spreading his wings, I look at Liam Cohen and I look at a guy that was at Kentucky and he was running those offenses in the SEC. He was with the Rams with Sean McVay and Zach Robinson, now the offensive coordinator at Atlanta Falcons. And you look at, I think, in all the sports, and you're like me, you love all the sports, where it's like the best coaches are the ones that are like, I'm going to go watch Steve Kerr for 2 weeks, right? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go spend spring training and I'm going to go a week with, Dave Roberts in LA. Like, you know what I mean? Like those guys, if you're still stuck in that one, even if you come from Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest coach in the NFL, like your life experiences weren't the same as his. Like this was the defensive coordinator of the Giants for the greatest defensive player of all time, and Lawrence Taylor. Like he's with Cleveland. You know what I mean? Like he had experiences all over the place. He wasn't just the New England head coach, even though ultimately that's what he's going to be remembered by. Before I let you go, I want to talk some hockey because the Lightning do play the Bruins tomorrow night at Amalie Arena.
Do I have to?
I mean, there's such one of my favorite players that I've ever gotten a chance to talk to in my life, David Pasternak. Met him a couple years ago at the All-Star game down in South Florida. I asked him, who's your favorite 88? Because there's so many 88s. And he goes, there's only one answer, Andrei Vasilevsky. And he made me take their picture together.
Nice.
Pasta he was great. All he wanted to do was play with Kucherov. All he wanted to do was hang out with Andrei Vasilevsky. I was like, this is the reason why you're on Dunkin' Donuts commercials. Everybody loves you. And then you have Brad Marchand, who, the rat. But when we had the All-Star game here, they had a big picture of the rat and he posed for it. Like, I love that he plays the foil. He plays the heel. But what can we expect from tomorrow night? I mean, regardless of what the record is, it seems like whenever these two teams play, Pasta, Kucherov, Marchand, Point, like one of those guys is going to do something insane.
Yeah, look, it's not good what's going on. I wish I could sit here. If you ask me about the Celtics, maybe I could give you some good stuff, but it's not good with the Bruins. They've lost 5 in a row. Pasternak, career low shooting percentage. He's had somewhat of a down season. 2 games prior to last night's loss where they just got humiliated by Edmonton. He did score 2 goals in each of those 2 games, so maybe he's getting it going a little bit, but he's been a disappointment this year. Marchand got off to a slow start. He had some surgeries over the offseason, including a hip, but he's played much better as of late. So Marchand's played much better. Their best player early in the year was Hampus Lindholm, and he's been out for a while with an injury. He was on the ice yesterday. I don't think he's going to be back, within the next week or so. But so that hurt them as well. But look, they lack scoring. Everybody knew they lacked scoring. They needed to go out and get secondary scoring. They brought in Elias Lindholm, who is not, a huge scorer. He's a 20-goal guy, 25-goal guy, tops, right? They lost to Brusque. They lost Danton Heinen. So they lost some quality scoring. Van Riemsdyk, who had, 11, 12 goals last year. So they lost some of their scoring. They said before the offseason that they wanted to add scoring, and they didn't do it. And then They went out and they signed, Zadorov, Nikita Zadorov, a defenseman, a big defenseman.
Huge,
Left shot guy, right? And they decided to sign him instead of signing a veteran wing for the $5 million or $6 million they spent on Zadorov. So I hated that idea. I didn't mind Zadorov as a thought, but I would have went wing with my money. They didn't. Zadorov got off to a terrible start. He's been a little bit better lately. He can't stay out of the box consistently, which is a problem. And you look at special teams. Look, their penalty kill sucks. Their power play sucks. The goaltending, they pay Jeremy Swayman big time money this offseason. As of before last night, he was 40th in the NHL in save percentage. So Swayman has not been nearly good enough. And last night at the Garden, fans started chanting "Fire Sweeney," the GM. So I think people have had enough. So it's not good. Again, 5 losses in a row. They've got a tough schedule coming up. This thing could completely crater quickly if it's not already starting to.
Surprised that Monty got fired. I mean, they really no grace period for him.
No, I don't think so. Look, I don't think he was getting to the guys, and he was doing this. We're going to shuffle, the lines every single night. It was like the Jim Montgomery blender. Right. Every night it was something different. They were hoping their young guys like Merkelov and Lysell and Patra would give them a boost scoring wise and some energy. None of that has happened. None of those 3 guys have done anything. So, I mean, their 4th line has been their best line from beginning to right now, really, when you look at it. And they just allow guys to operate in space way too often. There's just way too much space out there on the ice. Mm-hmm. And they were supposed to be physical and big and intimidating and defensive with goaltending. And they're on their heels a lot, and they allow teams that space to operate. And because of that, they give up some easy goals way too often. So it just hasn't been good enough. And I would imagine if things don't turn around here quickly, that after this year's over, Sweeney is gone, and they kind of look at this thing and try to figure out what they want to do with this roster.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that happens in hockey. Like, you see these teams that are good for like the better part of a decade. They're always drafting at the end of the first round. And then they're hoping that some of their young guys are able to kind of like fill that bottom 6 and then kind of develop and eventually push their way into the top 6. And then when it doesn't happen, all you do is you're looking at these guys, they're 30-point-a-year guys. And then you just start looking at your veterans and you're going, Krejci's a year older, Bergeron's a year older, Char's a year older, Pasternak's a year older, Marchand a year older, and then they start retiring. And then it's just like, and then you start looking around, you're going, shit, man, the depth was really good about this team. And then Grzelcyk leaves, and then you still have McAvoy, which, Long Island guy, I'll always love him. But you're right, and you start looking around, you're like, the depth, man, it was one of the things that Boston prided itself on. All 4 lines, you can rotate them regardless of who the coach was. And I think you see that a lot in hockey, man. The team has some success, and then all of a sudden you don't have those youth guys pushing the vets. And then those the vets get too old, and then you're kind of stuck in this spot where you're firing coaches, and you're wondering if the GM's going to make it from one year to the next.
Yeah, and then you're throwing 4th line guys on the third line guys on the second line guys on the first line. Their top 6, it's not really a top 6 that's going to scare you across the board. The grand plan was for one of those young guys to be a second line wing, which I didn't like the idea of from the beginning. They didn't work out. So now you're already kind of shuffling and trying to make up for things. And DeBrusk ran hot and cold. There's no doubt, but he did have his good streaks, and he was one of their best postseason players the last few years. So I did not agree with the plan. And it's kind of unfolding the way that doesn't surprise me too much.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow night, because like I said, regardless of what these teams' records are at times, you just kind of throw them out the window because you're in store for an entertaining hockey game. Nick Cattle Show, Nick C Radio, Twitter/X, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Check him out on 98.5 as well. Doing a little bit of everything. You want to talk about a guy that is grinding and busting his ass to put his name out there and to talk all things New England sports and all sports around the country. Nick Cattles is that guy. Nick, great catching up with your brother. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll be counting down the minutes until Mike Vrabel's named the coach of the Pats.
Appreciate you, man. Go Notre Dame football, by the way. Tomorrow night
Yes,
against
sir.
Penn State. Give me a Notre Dame win. I'll talk to you later, Jay.
All right, pal. Good talking to you. Always appreciate Nick Cattles. Yeah, Notre Dame. Listen, I didn't grow up as a college football like diehard. Didn't grow up in the South, but my grandma, God rest her soul, big time Notre Dame fan. So I know she's looking down, cheering on the Fighting Irish as they take on. I mean, think about the Blue Bloods in the college football playoff semifinals. You have Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, and Ohio State. They could not have drawn that up any better, regardless of what the seeding is. I mean, those are 4 teams with huge fan bases, and it should be fun to watch. What was fun to watch last night was the last 50-something seconds of that Lightning game at Amalie Arena. Braden Point with the incredible goal to send the Lightning home, fans home happy at Amalie. And we bring in for his weekly hit, the one and only Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. Sign up for lightninginsider.com right now. Use that promo code JNZ. Get $10 off, not just this year, but every recurring season after that. What's up, Double E? How are you?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
Good. What kind of hat is that you got there, buddy? Maroons. Okay. Old school.
Montreal Maroons. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Gift of young Kevin, who gave it as a Christmas gift, not this year, but last year.
Young Kevin. We're going to call you Montreal Maroons and Spoons. I think that's a great. That's a great. Well, I want to start here because I mentioned this a little bit on my Recher's Rapid Reaction last night. That could have been the worst game I've ever seen Nikita Kucherov play. Don't look at the stats because Bobby the Chief Taylor and I were looking at the stats. They only had 1 giveaway. There was at least 4. He's just forcing it so much right now. He's not feeling too great. He's trying to make passes that aren't there. But less than a minute to go, he's the guy that makes the pass to Braden Point in front. Of course, Pointer makes an incredible play, but Nikita Kucherov, the vision, the ability to make that pass, even though he's having just a terrible game. I mean, that says all you need to know about elite hockey players, where it sometimes just takes one moment.
That's why, like, I know it can be frustrating to watch sometimes, and trust me, my social media mentions show that from time to time. I think I had somebody say last night, I'm looking forward to the 7th Nikita Kucherov turnover to cost them this game, right? Because he sees the game different than anybody else. And I mean anybody else. So I guarantee you don't think, what is he thinking when he knows what he's thinking? Mm-hmm. He's trying to, and you said it best, he was trying to force some things.
Right.
And when they went into the game last night, having just scored a total of 3 goals in the previous 3 games and 5 over the previous 4, he's counted on to produce offense. Him and Point and Gensel. I mean, these guys are paid to produce offense, and they didn't come through in the match, the 3 games in California. So he was pressing. There's no doubt. I think, I thought Braden Point was pressing on the road trip as well. And look, he had that great breakaway opportunity where Kochetkov made an old school poke check early in the game to kind of disrupt things. But that's why you don't give up on players who are just on a different level. And we know Nikita Kucherov is on a different level. To like you go through, like, go frame by frame of that play. And, it starts with Hedman collecting the puck in the neutral zone. He throws it back against the wall. Jay Gensel does a good job of rimming it back around to Nikita Kucherov. Start your frame by frame there and just watch Kuch just take that quick peek. He knows what's going on, and he's got such great chemistry with Braden Point. He knows what could happen. Not that it will happen, but he knows what could happen. So you can see the instant that Braden Point recognizes the opportunity that's about to happen. And he just takes a quick couple of strides to get right to that soft area that opened up right in front of the slot, because Carolina didn't think the puck was going there.
Right.
Because why would you? But that's Nikita Kucherov. So you watch all of that develop, and you understand the gift that Nikita Kucherov has, the vision that he has to see things that not many other players in this league are going to identify and recognize in the instant that he did. And before Carolina knew what happened, Pointer's open in the middle of the slot because Kucherov makes the great pass. Point makes an unbelievable play and recognition on his own right in a 1.1 second amount of time to figure all that out. I mean, it's goal of the year stuff. It was that good of a play. And, for a team that was struggling to score some goals on the trip, not that he didn't have chances. I mean, they had chances in all 3 of those games. They probably should have won in LA, and they could have won the other 2 games. I don't think they played particularly well against San Jose, but, for a team that went into that game with all of the challenges stacked against them, including arriving back in Tampa at 5:00 on Monday afternoon and then have to turn around and play Carolina 24 hours later, it was almost the perfect way to snap out of that 3-game losing streak with, Braden Point, occasionally he lets out some emotion. He doesn't let out a lot of emotion sometimes with regular season goals. You saw it in his celebration last night. There was some emotion. So it was, I don't want to say it was a weight lifted off their shoulder, but just everything that kind of was going against them into that game to win it in that manner. That's a pretty uplifting kind of way to win the game. And it starts with a superstar player who's struggling on a night. You all it takes is an instant. And that's what Nikita Kucherov delivered to another player who knows how to make things happen in an instant.
I think also too, it also meant a lot, or it provided that much more emotion because you're playing a team like Carolina, right? I say Carolina is like a mirror. Carolina Hurricanes are a mirror. They show you exactly who you are, because if you are not going to be disciplined, if you're not going to play defense, they're going to outskate you. They're going to shoot the puck and get as many shots on goal as humanly possible. I don't know what they ended, because we know the stats change in the spirit of the great Mark Dittler, but it looked like the shots were 32 apiece. I thought the Lightning did a decent job of kind of keeping them into the outside. It wasn't a ton of grade A chances for Carolina, and if you can do that, I think you can win. And I haven't been as high as on Carolina than I know a lot of other people. They seem like the sexy pick to win every year. I don't think they go to the net nearly enough. I don't think they take enough chances to go to the net and to go to the dirty areas. I think when you can play them the way you did last night, I mean, just think about it. Vasi gives up that one cheapie, right? And other than that, they do go to the dirty area to get that goal. But I thought the Lightning played a pretty solid contest last night. I still don't, even though Kochetkov, I think, made some nice saves, their goalie for the last couple of years, Freddie Anderson. I mean, some people think he's good, but at times he's facing 18 shots a night. How do you know how good that guy's going to be until you see him in the postseason? So I believe that, again, but they are disciplined. Rod Brind'Amour is a great coach, but when you beat a team like that and you have the skill of a Braden Point to be able to do that, I think that's why I always have the Lightning over Carolina. And you mentioned Nikita Kucherov and his vision. That's something that Braden Point told us in the locker room last night. Even when you don't think that Nikita Kucherov sees you, he sees you. I thought that was such a subtle, perfectly articulated line about the greatness and almost the subtle greatness of Nikita Kucherov, because he looks before he even gets to the puck. And not a lot of people do that. And then you and I talk about this. You see it a lot in soccer because you have so much more time. You have so much more time for the ball to get to you. And you're just playing, obviously, on the pitch that's much bigger on the ice. But he almost takes that soccer approach of before you even get to that area, forget the puck, the area, I'm going to kind of have an idea of where my players are at. And I love watching him do his thing, even though, a bunch of turnovers last night. I want to ask you about a guy in Connor Geekie. And I mentioned this last night to Chief of 1 point in 9 games. He had a point last night, got a plus, which was good to see. I know he's a rookie, right? So I'm not trying to act like this guy's not, he doesn't, that I understand that has to be part of the conversation, but I think there's more in there when it comes to playing with a little bit more of a snarl, getting to the net. I think he's playing a little bit too much on the periphery. If you can take out the he's a rookie part of this discussion, what do you see from his game, and can he improve? I think he can, but do you see that similar thing where he's not as aggressive, and it seems like he might be thinking a little bit too much?
Well, I don't wonder if the shoulder's bothering him.
Yeah,
right. He took that stumble right before Christmas, missed the game at Sunrise on the 23rd. So, you don't know if that factors into it, and he would never tell you anyway if it was, right? But yeah, I mean, look, he's 20 years old, used to playing against players who are in a lot of ways smaller than him, Certainly, there's other skilled players for sure, but he's used to being one of the top skilled guys on his team. He's that good of a junior player. And look, this is why he's only the second 20-year-old in the Iserman / Breezeblatt era to make the jump straight from juniors to the NHL, because they like their younger players to season themselves at the AHL level, because it's a different game at the AHL level. You have to fight more for your space. At that level than you do at the NHL. It's crazy as that to sound. It's just the way the game is played in the A. So he's adjusting to a different type of game he has to play. And for sure, there's more there this year. You see the potential, though. 3-4 years down the road, he gets some more muscle on him and understands the game and understands the league better, understands the time and space that he has compared to what he thinks he has. It's going to start coming for him in a more consistent basis. And that's why you don't wonder if, you're looking ahead to March and the trade deadline. Are they looking for a middle six guy who could potentially play second line? Look, Geeky's played very well with Hagel and Cirelli. And, and the other part of it too is, as a 20-year-old, even in the Western League, where you play 60 some odd games, now you're playing 80 games, and you're playing 80 games against guys that you have to be physically up against on a nightly basis. And, that's why I always say sometimes rookies hit a wall, and I'm not saying he's hit a wall, but you can't tell me it hasn't taken its toll, especially now, right now, in the middle of this month and this schedule that they have. This is a tough stretch. Yeah. That he kind of has to get back to a mentality of, what earned him a spot on this team coming out of training camp. That sort of snarl and the willingness to kind of get to those areas. And, those will come. The goals will come. The assists will come. The physicality. I think he's second on the team in hits among forwards on the team. So he still has that part of his game. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he has to be more of a consistent player in some of those harder areas to get to, because as we know, that's where the goals are scored. And if I'm not mistaken, that's where he scored his first goal. I didn't get a tip against Washington, sort of in the slot area. So he has to get to that area a little bit more often for sure. But look, he's also playing with two guys in Cirelli and Hagel who are such ferocious forecheckers, right? Those guys already show how willing they are to get to those areas. So it's part of that is reading off of your line mates as well.
Yeah, I think that's where I look at it. I don't look at it as much of like I do want him to play with more snarl. I do want him to be a little bit more of a Brad Marchand than Alex Barkov. But I look at the soft spots of the ice, right? I always think back to Jaromir Jagr, where guys would be down low and Jagr would just back up ever so slightly to just be away and drift away, and the puck always came to him. And I just think that's one of the big parts of his growth that he really needs to work on, because Cirelli and Hagel, they're in their prime. Like, they know exactly what it takes to be contributors at the NHL level. They're going to be playing for Team Canada. Like, they know what their game is all about and what they need to do to be successful. And I know it's tough for him as a rookie. I just hope that he can speed up that process a little bit, because I don't think it needs to wait that long. I think it's there. I just think it's a confidence thing and maybe an injury thing. You mentioned something about a trade and trying to get a second line guy or a middle six guy. I feel like the balance is off a little bit offensively for this team, because I see Nick Paul sometimes and I'm like, man, this guy can really shoot the puck. He scored a goal last night. I think on other teams, he might be a second line center, but it just seems like Cirelli's been groomed for that spot. And Nick Paul's on that third line. And I just don't know if the caliber of players that he's playing with is really going to accentuate his offensive gifts. If they do make a deal, you would have to think a middle six guy, because to me, and this is no knock on Gonçalves and Chafee, but I feel like they have 5 fourth line forwards, to go. And I got no issue with Glendening and Zergensons and whoever else they seem to play there. But I feel like this team is missing a forward or two to kind of really get the line set in a spot where you don't even have to think twice. And, we always go back to that third line of Gord, Goodrow, and Coleman. Like, they didn't have to move those guys. Nobody questioned, like, those should be fourth line guys. Those should be second line guys. It was like, that was your third line. You knew Maroon and Belmar and those guys were on the fourth line, and that was your third line. How do they rectify that? I'd say that bottom six to make sure that there's a little bit more skill on that third line, and you kind of lock in with the guys that can play their ass off on the fourth line. Because I don't see that offensive production coming from Asamont, Gonsalves, Chafee, and I'm just going to exclude Glendening and Gergensons because that's your fourth line pair.
Yeah. If you could unlock Gage Gonsalves offensively, I think you'd have your answer. The problem is that you haven't yet. And he's
is
had
that
plenty
going to
of
come though?
opportunities.
I mean, that's
yeah,
the thing.
That's the question, right? That's you don't know that. You've seen it. You know, he certainly had a couple of the past 2 years in particular. You saw the exponential growth in his game. That's why he's getting the opportunity to kind of be here. And, you know, you saw some of the playmaking ability that he has when he first came up, you know, and again, we're still talking about a rookie. What is he, 23, 24 years old, you know, trying to find his game, but like he's not shooting the puck. You know, he's not getting to some of those areas that we just talked about with Connor Geekie. You see the ability and you wonder why it's not there. Like, what does he have? He only has 2 points. I think he has a goal and assist to this point. So, you know, the potential is there. So if you could unlock it and find a way, and I think that's why you've seen Asamont moved up to that third line because he's been much more noticeable in the last little while. I know it hasn't shown up on the scoreboard, but, you know, he's such a pest. He's been around the net. He's doing his job effectively at getting under other teams' skin. You know, so he's been much more effective in the role that he plays. And that's why Gonsalves has been playing fourth lines with Glendening and Gergensons. Now, that's not going to unlock Gonsalves' game, but I think it's an opportunity for the coaching staff to kind of subtle message to him, hey, you need to be better. You want to get back up, you know, playing on a third line role and earn some more minutes. You got to do some more of this because I think Asamont has done that. So if that doesn't come, and even if it does, can you count on that in April? It's a good question, and we don't know the answer to that. But that's why I think if you are going to look down the line at March, that's probably similar to last year when they brought in Anthony Duclair in a similar situation, a middle six guy. He was more of a top six guy because he's played first and second line when he was brought over here. That type of a mold of player who can be flexible and move up and down and bring a little bit more consistent offensive threat to the lineup. And you're right. I think at that point you do balance the lines out because let's face it, they have maybe a little bit more depth than we thought, right? Mitchell Chafee has 7 goals and Nick Paul became the 6th guy to hit the 10-goal mark last night. So they have maybe a little bit more offensive depth than we thought going into the season. But they're still reliant on 5 guys, right? It's the top 5 guys. And you saw those guys all struggle to score in California. And that's part of the reason they only scored 3 goals in those 3 games because those guys weren't producing. And that's where you needed maybe a Gonsalves to step up or, you know, Gergensons to get his first goal of the season. That guy's snake bit right now. He can't find, you know, the opportunities that he does create to get in the back of the net. So you need that when your top guys aren't doing it, which just kind of highlights and you know, magnifies the fact that it's Sorelli and Hagel and Point and Kucherov and Gensel that have to carry the load offensively. And if they're not, you know, you're going to have stretches like they did in California. So yeah, if that and depth defense, I think is something that when we get to March is something you're going to look at that Julian will probably try and bring in.
It's funny you just mentioned Gergensons. The Latvian tradition, the good luck charm, is a lilac flower with 5 petals. It is believed to bring luck and is used for making wishes. The flower can be eaten or dried and kept close by, such as in a book, pocket, or wallet. Because he had a great chance in front of the net last night. Forehand, backhand, and Kochekov made a nice save. I think that's what we got to do, man. We got to find a lilac flower with 5 petals.
It's much better than a live chicken.
I got Jobu right here, buddy. Jobu's always ready.
Of course you do.
We gotta pray to Jobu. My buddy Frankie's been asking for this for so long, but I stole Jobu. He's always right by my side right here. Darren Radish last night, 50 points, quickest Lightning defenseman to 50 points. I mean, you think about the Dan Boyles of the world and the Victor Hedmans of the world. It was Darren Radish that was the guy that got closest to, the fastest to 50 points. I mean, I was surprised. I got to admit. But this is a guy that bided his time, played in the minors for a while, and has come up here, and he's a guy he's a pro's pro. Just talking to him, you feel good for a guy like that. And he's a family guy. We obviously saw his brother up here, but I was surprised that he was the first guy to 50 points. How about you?
Yeah, I had to do double check on that myself.
Yeah.
But it's like, didn't make sense. Now he's a little older, right? He didn't get in the
Yeah.
league till 27, 28 years old. So, his game is a little bit more refined than maybe some of those other players. I mean, when Dan Boyle got here, that's, he wasn't getting ice time because all he was offense, right? And he had to learn that part of the game. And, Pablo Kubina had that record before. He got big minutes because of, the type that he could play, and he played on some power play time. And Victor Hedman, again, Rick Tocchet that rookie year kind of eased him into the lineup a little bit and didn't put too much pressure on him as they taught him to be more of a defensive guy. Whereas Radish comes in, is a little bit older. He understands who he is and what his game is all about. So he's more comfortable, I think, in making some plays that maybe a 21-year-old defenseman wouldn't be necessarily comfortable making, but it's a credit to him. You see so many different paths for players to reach the NHL, and Radish certainly took a different route. He was undrafted despite really good numbers in junior. He was on some powerhouse Erie teams, put up huge offensive numbers for them. But he had some defensive deficiencies in his game that had a lot of people concerned, but he just kept working, and he kept working, and he kept working. He got his opportunity, and now he's a regular in the lineup. And even this year, Darren Radish was a healthy scratch a good portion of the early part of the season.
Yeah.
Right. Because JJ Moser's hurt right now. So he's been Victor Hedman's partner with Moser out. So even through this year, kind of dealing with some of those situations and waiting for his time to come. And he's done it just like he's done his entire career. And you do feel good. Those are feel good stories for guys. I'm sure he's probably surprised to find out that he's the quickest to 50 points among defensemen in franchise history. But yeah, you like to see those type of stories play out the way that Darren's has, the hard route to get to the NHL.
Yeah, I wanted to look up that 2016-2017 Erie Otters team where he had 81 points, good for third on the team. Alex DeBrincat was on the team. His brother Taylor was on the team. Dylan Strome was on the team. Warren Fogle was on the team. And then, Anthony Cirelli and Erik Chernak are on the team as well.
Cirelli was a late season addition,
Mm-hmm.
But Cirelli had already been a Memorial Cup champion. He had the overtime game-winning goal in the Memorial Cup the year before Cirelli did. But yeah, that team was stacked, and that was, just after Connor McDavid left.
Yeah, you look at that 20. That's the team that I think 2014, 2015. Dylan Strome, Connor McDavid, Alex DeBrincat, Darren Bradish, Travis Dermott, Curtis McDermott, Taylor Radish, and Mason Marchment. Woo! That was a squad right there. Those Erie teams are no joke.
Yep.
No joke at all. What'd you make of the World Juniors? Team USA winning gold second year in a row. Pretty happy about that.
Yeah, boy, did they grind that tournament out. Right?
Yeah, especially that last game, down 3-1 to the Finns, and they just they went about it the right way. They just really started grinding and forechecking, and you could see their skill matched with their effort really got them back into that game. And then Finland was they just couldn't match up with them. They just kept flying. And to see Stiga as the guy that scored his first goal the entire tournament, he scores the game winner. Nashville Predators fan, they're gonna love that guy. I loved Zeev Buium, the left-handed defenseman that's going to be a member of the Minnesota Wild. That dude is
what a pass.
Unreal. Ryan Leonard is going to be the new Brad Marchand, I think, pissing people off as a member of the Capitals. And then Gabe Perreault for the Rangers, for all the craziness that's going on there. There's a lot of good young players there for Team USA. Canada does not medal. And I wonder, does any of that unease carry over to the Four Nations face-off? I know they're two completely different teams, two completely different coaching staffs, but this is the next opportunity for Team Canada to play in an international contest against, and this is best on best, U.S., Finland, Sweden to go alongside Canada. Where do you think the pressure is going to lie when it comes to Team Canada and coming out on top in this thing?
First of all, you forgot to mention Lane Hudson.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
Cole Hudson, Lane's
Yeah,
brother.
Lane's brother, yeah.
Yeah, Cole Hudson, first defenseman to ever lead that tournament in scoring, which
Amazing.
tells you something. Now, some great forwards have certainly come through
Right.
the World Juniors, but yeah, I mean, great performance by Team USA. It starts with an easy game against Germany, and then I think the rest of it, even against Latvia, they had to, Latvia surprised a lot of people. Obviously,
Yeah,
they beat
they beat
Canada, and
Canada,
they gave
yeah.
Sweden the scare in the quarterfinals. So they had to grind out every game, and that's a credit to David Carl, the coach there, who got a lot of skilled players to understand you have to grind things out. And even in a short tournament that has a history of blowouts, they were able to find their way to kind of grind things through. As far as any carryover to the Four Nations, I don't think there's any. Different management teams.
I'm
Different
talking more.
type
I'm
of
talking more
tournament.
about. I'm talking more about. I guess the fans, like the fans looking at it like this is our sport. We didn't even medal. God, we better do something in this Four Nations face-off.
I don't get that sense just because it's NHL players, and certainly there will be a faction of Canadian fans that are like, oh my goodness, are we not the hockey power we once were? And guess what? I hate to break this news to Canadian fans, they're not. All you got to do is look at the rosters for this Four Nations, and sure, you've got McKinnon and you've got McDavid and Braden Point. I mean, you got obviously some top skilled players that you're going to have. But, I think back to that 2010 Olympic team that Canada had. And, Roberto Luongo, and this was kind of the start of their trend of goaltenders who are they're not elite goaltenders. And, but in that tournament, Luongo didn't have to be. He was towards the tail end of his career, obviously, because the defense was so damn good that if anybody sniffed the net, they were taken out. There were no rebound opportunities. There were no second chance opportunities. And now you look at Canada, and I don't know if they have that type of defense anymore. They don't have the Niedermeyers and, those kind of guys that could just kind of erase everything around the net. And then you look at you're contemplating whether Sam Montembeault is your number one guy. And that's not a knock on Sam Montembeault, but he
wouldn't be in the discussion if he wasn't playing with the Canadians. That's just the way it goes.
And you look at the goalies for the other three teams in this nation, and it doesn't even count Russia, right? With Vasilevsky and Shesterkin and Samsonov, and the quality, the quality of goaltenders that Russia puts out there. It's not even in the same tier. So in terms of producing the depth that Canada has in the past, no, it's not there. I would say on paper, the U.S. is probably the favorite. I mean, just their goaltending alone, and they've got an underrated defensive core, and they've got guys who can score and check and everything else. And we'll see what Austin Matthews' status is. He's obviously been in and out of the lineup for the Maple Leafs here, so
he better be playing.
Yeah. Kevin's listening somewhere, going, "You're damn right, he better be playing."
Better be playing.
There's always going to be pressure on Canada. Especially with some of the games taking place in Montreal. And there will be factions of Canadian fans who are going to have that thought process. Wait a second, we're the greatest hockey producing nation in the world. But the rest of the world is caught up.
Yep.
The rest of the world is caught up to Canada, US, their development program. I mean, kudos to USA Hockey, who has put together this national development program. And, you look at the players that they're producing. I mean, first round pick after first round pick after first round pick. And that's why they won back-to-back gold medals at the World Junior Tournament. And guess what? The World Juniors is on U.S. soil next year in St. Paul and Minneapolis. And, they're going to have a strong chance to be a three-peat team. So that's why the U.S. has started to produce some of these top elite type of players, the Eichels, the Matthews, the Zach Werenskis and these type of players, Cole Caulfield, that have come through, even though Caulfield's not even on the USA roster. They've come through the development program and put themselves out there as, arguably the top producing nation in the world of depth and talents in the hockey community. I think on paper, the only country that you could say that now is probably Russia, but they're not in this tournament.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that they're not involved. I mean, I remember being at the All-Star game last year and people were asking some of the Russians, and asking Pasternak and Leon Draisaitl, and they're like, we don't care. Like, we don't care. Like, they're like, oh, what do you think of the Four Nations thing? They're like, we don't care. That could be a blessing though for the Lightning, with Kucherov and Vasilevsky getting some time off. So hey, we'll make the best of it for sure. Lightning back in action tomorrow night against the Boston Bruins, 7:00 puck drop at Amalie Arena. Make sure you follow him on Twitter /X, Erik _Erlendsson. That's a K, not a C. 2 S's after the D. LightningInsider.com. Sign up today. Use that promo code JNZ. Get $10 off, not just this year, but every recurring year after that. Double E, you're the man. I appreciate you, brother, and I'll see you tomorrow night up in the press box.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, pal. The one and only Erik Erlendsson, LightningInsider.com. Bolts big win last night. What a goal from Braden Point. Still, he's just on another level. And I walked by Ed Encina last night from the Tampa Bay Times, and I said, Braden Point is a bad mother. You know what's. He's incredible. Second in the league in scoring goals. He's quicker than a hiccup. I'm so glad he plays for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So glad this guy covers the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Pewter Report and joins us on the program today, the one and only Matt Matera, Matty4_Matera. He's there in his car at the Advent Health Training Center at One Buc Place. His license plate number is Matt, New York Mats for life. I love Juan Soto. What's going on, brother?
Oh, not much, Jay. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always great talking to you. So excited to chat about this hopeful playoff run for the Bucs.
It's so crazy that they win 6 of 7. They end up winning that final game. It was just so cool to be there in attendance, to be able to watch that game and to see Mike Evans get the record. And I love one of the few people that were almost looking at it like, all right, now we got to move on. Now we got to move forward is Graham Barton. I was talking to him in the locker room. He's like, now we got to focus on the playoffs. You were there. What's the mindset for this team as they turn the page from the dramatic win there in week 18 to now the playoff matchup against the Washington Commanders?
I literally just got outside after speaking to Graham Barton. He was in the locker room today. And it's funny, you mentioned like everyone getting excited about all these records and what Mike did. Apparently, Bucky Irving got everybody these T-shirts. It's with Bucky's face on it and says 1K, and there's a tiny little duck in the bottom right corner as well. And Bucky got it for everybody, which Graham was wearing today when he spoke to all of us. So I think that was the cherry on top, the last tip of the cap. But everybody now, whether it was Baker who we spoke to, Todd Bowles, everybody knows the mindset now. It's win or go home. There's no tomorrow after Sunday's game if they don't win. So there's no room for error. Obviously, the Commanders are a good team that is way different than who the Bucs saw in week 1 to begin the season. So I think all that's in the past now. Everybody can commemorate what went on with Mike and Bucky and clinching the division, but it's all business now. We saw what they did last year, going on a little bit of a run, and they want to go even further this year.
Yeah, you got that right, man. I mean, to win a game last year against the Philadelphia Eagles, you're like, all right, hey, you're in a good spot, played some good football. We know Philadelphia was on kind of the downturn of their season. They started out hot, and then it just all came crumbling down. What is your biggest concern when it comes to Jayden Daniels? And I'm talking a little bit more in depth than just like his legs. We know, he is a guy that can really hurt you in the running game, and we'll acknowledge your tribal chief, Ed Encina, chiming in. Acknowledge your tribal chief, Braden Point, wrestling fan. Hell, the last time I talked to you, Ed Encina.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
It's so funny. We love you, Ed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Jayden Daniels, what worries you about him other than just the obvious, like he's an athletic freak and, he can run the ball, 15 times if they allow him to?
Yeah, it's not even the scrambling, and that's certainly a big part of it, but it's just his ability to extend a play and provide a little more time for guys to get open. Because as electric as Jayden Daniels is, and he knows, even in that first game, he knew where to go with the football. It's just whether or not he had time. If Jayden Daniels can extend the play by 1 or 2 more seconds, I mean, hell, we've seen Cooper Rush, even Spencer Rattler last game with some dink and dunks. Like, tight ends have killed the Bucs this year, so just giving their tight end another second to get open. Terry McLaurin, who was very pedestrian in the first game against the Bucs but had a great season, just giving those skill position players one more moment to get open with the secondary and a linebacker group that's really struggled in pass coverage this year. To me, that's the biggest concern with Jaden Daniels is how many times have we seen, and Yaya Diaby had a great week. He was NFC Defensive Player of the Week. Hopefully that can carry into the postseason as well. But how many times have we seen the edge rushers be close but no cigar, or they have the quarterback ready and then somehow gets out of it? It's been a lot of Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey, but if they're not getting it done, I'm worried that Jaden Daniels is going to have a lot of time to throw. And then today's NFL and with the Bucs secondary, guys are going to be open. And can the Bucs win in a shootout? Yes, I do, but you don't want to get to that part.
Exactly. What do we know as far as an update from Todd Bowles on a guy like Antoine Winfield Jr.? Because it'll be a lot, I don't want to say easy, but easier to try to contain Jaden Daniels if you have number 31 out there.
Yeah, actually some really good news with Antoine Winfield Jr. And the Bucs had a walkthrough today. They've been doing that for Wednesdays, really the last month and a half, just later in the season. But if they were to actually practice today, Antoine Winfield Jr. would have been a full participant. So that is great news. He started practicing last week a little bit in a limited capacity. So it looks like he'll be a full participant tomorrow, or at least getting out there with the helmet and the shoulder pads when they're actually getting going. And I mean, there's been injuries all year long for the Bucs, but specifically at safety, at the point now, Christian Isian's on IR. Jordan Whitehead finally gets back and then gets into that unfortunate car accident, and now he's out for the year. They desperately need Antoine Winfield Jr. back, because even though Kayvon Merriweather I thought was solid last game, this is a completely different animal with the with the playoffs and playing against a lot better offenses. So great to see Antoine Winfield Jr. looking like he's scratching and clawing, trying to get back into the lineup, the roster, and to play in this playoff game. So we'll see.
Yeah, excited about that. They're going to definitely need him, if not only in this game, but if they are able to advance on farther, because it's only going to get more difficult when you're playing some of these other elite teams in the NFC. I want to ask you about Rachaad White. Didn't get any touches in that game. What do you make of him not being a factor in Week 18 against the Saints? And do you think he'll get some more touches this Sunday night against Washington?
Yeah, I was curious about that. Didn't even have a target either, and I think he's done more of his damage as a receiving running back. And Todd Bowles said earlier this week, we got to get him touches. We got to get him the ball. I honestly think it was just how the game was going. The Bucs decided we're going to ride with Bucky Irving, and they used Bucky in a lot more passing plays as well, which came as a little bit of a surprise because Rachaad White is their best pass blocking running back. And you would think, well, the way that the game went early on, it seemed like the Bucs were a little bit too hyper focused on getting Mike Evans the football. And I get it. Like I'd want to get Mike the football as well. But I think they tried to take the Saints off guard a little bit and surprise them by being like, okay, we're going to have Bucky in the game, but we're also going to throw it. Because when you think, oh, they're going to throw it, Rachaad White will be in the game. But that wasn't the case. His one rushing attempt got negated by a penalty, so it didn't even count. It was a little odd, but I'm going to chalk it up to just the way that the game went, the way that it played out, just didn't get Rachaad involved. I don't think that's going to be who knows how many more games they have left, but I don't think it's going to be a weekly occurrence or something that you have to worry about for next season as well. I just think it was one of those anomalies that occasionally happens from time to time.
Saw some interesting whether Cade Otton could come back as well. And we've seen the tight end step up. You're not these guys with Mike being back now and some of these other guys emerging. They're not going to get 10 targets, but you see the last couple of weeks, Devin Culp. With a couple of grabs. You see Payne Durham with the touchdown grab last week. Like, it's really cool to see that tight end room kind of step up and when their number's called, make some plays. And we've kind of seen that. That's kind of been their mode of operation the last couple of years. I remember the game against Houston last year where the Buccaneers lost, but Cade Otton had an incredible grab at the end. Payne Durham had a really nice catch last year. That's a room that I think they deserve a little bit more credit on answering the bell when their number's called, and also blocking. We talk about the running game, finished 4th in the regular season. As much as we want to talk about the offensive line and we want to talk about Liam Cohen and Bucky Irving, like the tight ends are in there a lot as well, throwing Keeft in there. Those guys have really made a nice jump from one season to the next, kind of just contributing in every facet.
No doubt about it, Jay. And I think a great example is actually if you go back 2 weeks ago when the Bucs absolutely throttled the Panthers. And on that first drive of the game, yes, it was a Mike Evans touchdown from the 1 yard line, but the play right before that was a huge catch and run by Payne Durham, who got tackled at the 1. The cool thing is on that play, you had all 3 tight ends in the game, Payne Durham, Keeft, and Devin Culp, and they just ran go routes, and Payne Durham was open and made the play. I think it speaks to Liam Cohen and his ability to get the best out of anyone, let alone the tight ends. But even look like when Mike and Chris went down, you had Ryan Miller scoring game-time touchdowns in Kansas City, and Kate Otten became a huge threat in the passing game. But then to bring it back to the tight ends, they're obviously better if Kate Otten's in there. But the contributions they're getting, Payne Durham, cracking skulls blocking, I think he is kind of the new iteration of Cam Brate. Like, he's not going to have all these crazy stats, maybe not a high volume of targets the way Kate Otten did when Mike and Chris were out. But Payne Durham scored a touchdown the last 2 games. He's been that red zone target. Right. Devin Culp has good speed. Like, that Panthers game 2 weeks ago was the most he ever played, had 52 receiving yards. That was 3rd highest on the Bucs in that game. So immediately making an impact. He had some clutch 3rd down catches last game. They know that they don't have to be Travis Kelce or Gronk or one of the top tight ends. They just have to do their part, and they really are, and it's great to see because this Bucs offense can just beat you in so many different ways. They can run it all day with Bucky Irving. They can obviously feed Mike Evans, or they can go to their 3rd, 4th, and 5th options and still find a way to beat you, and it's a great thing to see, and you certainly need it for the postseason. So definitely huge credit should go to those tight ends.
Yeah, Jalen McMillan too is another guy that's really done a great job. He's just another option there on the offense. And I don't know how many offensive players of the week. We also have Sean Tucker. It's just
right.
Don't forget about the one game that he had. But I want to ask you, we're talking about this team and talking about the contributions and the changes from one year to the next. One of the most popular names that we've heard over the last 7 days is Liam Cohen and his future. Where is your concern level when it comes to Liam Cohen and him not being a part of this team next season?
Oh, it's definitely a concern. I just don't think it's as much of like, oh my God, he's going to take a head coaching job no matter what. To me, for Liam Cohen, and I think Bucs fans should feel a little bit better when he spoke about it last week, and he's essentially like, yes, I want to be a head coach. That's a goal. But it can wait. It doesn't have to happen right now, with him saying, like, I'm having so much fun right now. And I think if you look at the head coaching jobs that are available at the moment, like, do you want to go to an absolute mess that is the New York Jets? No. Do you want to go to the Saints that are in cap hell and have an aging team? No. I understand the ties to New England because he's from there. He grew up a Patriots fan. He loves Tom Brady. But it seems like the Patriots are all in on Mike Vrabel. Yeah. So if that is the case, what are your options, really? The Jaguars, which they've requested to interview with him. The Raiders just became available. I don't know. And obviously, there's a reason why these teams want a new head coach. They are bad football teams that are underperforming. Yes, you can go and try to, like, be the savior of that. But if that's not the exact situation you want to get yourself into, right, why not? Like, why put yourself in it if you don't necessarily have to? I think it's very different what Dave Canales was going into last year with the Panthers and what Liam Cohen is now. Last year, there was not a lot of conversation about, oh my God, the Bucs are going to lose Dave Canales. They're going to have to find a new offense coordinator. He wasn't a hot button topic. He wasn't the next big name that people need to find. I think it was more of nobody wanted to coach at Carolina because of their owner, David Tepper. And they said, all right, we like Dave Canales. And Canales is going, well, I may never get a shot to be a head coach. I'm going to take it now. Liam Cohen, and sorry for my voice cracking. I'm just, this is a very important topic. Liam Cohen, everybody's been talking about him for weeks now. The Bucs are a high-flying offense. They're better than they really have been in, 3 or 4 seasons? Really, since that 2021 season, we haven't seen an offense this efficient in Tampa Bay. I think the biggest thing for keeping Liam Cohen, if he wants to stay and be an offensive coordinator, if they stick with Todd Bowles, is everybody's coming back next year except for maybe Chris Godwin. Baker's under contract. Mike is. The whole offensive line with the exception of Ben Bredesen. Jalen McMillan, obviously, on a rookie contract. The running back room with Bucky and Rashad White. They could just do this all over again, and then you don't know who's going to be available next season for a head coaching position. Maybe you find one that's better. Maybe Todd Bowles says, you know what? Next year, I'm done coaching. I'm over it. and then he can become the head coach of the Bucs. I get it. Like you gotta ride the momentum a little bit, but I don't see this Bucs offense slowing down next season if Liam Cohen's there because you have all the pieces in place.
I'm with you, man. Speaking of Todd Bowles, where do you think his job security is right now? I've been saying for the last couple of days and even last week of like, you're talking about a guy, and I know a lot of people may not like his game management when it comes to timeouts. Newsflash, there's not many good coaches out there when it comes to timeouts. It doesn't matter if your name is Bowles, Tomlin, Campbell, Raheem Morris. Like nobody seems, even they could have teams.
Andy Reid was criticized for years and years and years before he won Super Bowls about his timeout issues.
Tom Coughlin was another guy that didn't really do a great job when it came to timeout. So it's easier said than done. I think he catches way too much heat. You're talking about a guy that in the last 5 games of the season gave up 9 points in the second half, 3 field goals in the last 5 games. His halftime adjustments has been incredible. Now, am I saying that he's of the level of a top 5 coach in the league? No, but the fact that people are so quick to blame everything on Bowles, I just think it's kind of a quick, it's a quick hitter. It's a quick knee-jerk reaction. Partially, I'm sure it's because like, all right, get rid of him and because we want to keep Liam Cohen. But listen, Liam Cohen's an offensive coordinator, right? He's not a head coach. It's different. There's more decisions that need to be made. Where do you see Todd Bowles when it comes to his job security? Does he need to win this game on Sunday to keep his job? I don't necessarily think so. But how would you assess where Todd Bowles is right now?
It's a good question, and it's really like it's a lot of moving parts, right? In my opinion, if the Bucs were to lose against the Commanders on Sunday night, I think it's a coin flip. I think it's a 50-50 shot Todd Bowles is back, or that they decide to move on and probably go with Liam Cohen, but you can't 100% guarantee that. I think part of the problem is a lot of the issues have been on the Bucs defense. And you make a great point, and I wrote about it this week about how great the Bucs have been in the second half of games defensively over the past couple of contests. The shutout against the Chargers is a really good feather in the cap. But you also look at the quality opponents, and yes, they don't make the schedule. But what changes are going to be made on the defensive side? Because I don't think you can go into next season and be like, we need all the same coaches back, and we need that same production that we got. Because they're not intercepting the football. They're not really taking the ball away at all, and they're one of the worst teams in pass coverage. What changes and adjustments can Todd Bowles make? And let's remember, they've improved every year, but they won the division 8-9 and then 9-8. 10 wins, double-digit wins. I think that's great for Todd Bowles. Are they really getting the best out of their team, though, with Bowles as the head coach? And remember, he's 61, 62 years old. Liam Cohen's 39. If you think Liam Cohen is the next Sean McVay or whatever it may be, it's tough to pass up that opportunity when you could have your coach for the next decade or two, when Bowles is maybe coaching for 2 or 3 more years at most. It's a tough thing to battle because also Bowles does deserve credit for the halftime adjustments. He does deserve credit for keeping this team together during a losing streak. Now, at the same time, we've seen the same thing 2 years in a row. Do you want to do this every single year where you start out great, then you lose a bunch of games in a row, and then you kind of save your ass at the second half of the season, winning a bunch and getting into the postseason? I don't know. So if they were to win and they get to the second round, I think Bowles is safe. If they certainly get to the NFC Championship game, it'd be a really bad look to let go of Todd Bowles. So there's a lot of moving parts depending on how far the Bucs go over this next month.
I think I can't believe I'm saying this because you and I both saw him with the Jets. It's not the same. It's not the same now than it was at the end of the Jets tenure when things were falling apart. The foundation was cracking. Not even close. Like even this team 2 years in a row with their struggles in the middle of the season, you don't hear players, you don't hear murmurs coming out of people not liking Todd Bowles, or like you hear that everywhere in the National Football League.
That's true.
Hear that when it comes to Todd Bowles and the Buccaneers. I worry about. Everybody thinks like change is always good. Sometimes it's not. Now you go Liam Cohen. Okay, you elevate him as the head coach because you don't want to lose him as your play caller. Well, what if when the team goes through a struggle in the middle of the season, he panics and he doesn't show faith in his guys, and then people start alienating him, and then he loses the respect of the room. Because once you lose respect of the room, it is awfully hard to get it back. And Bowles never has lost the respect of the room. He's loyal to a fault holding on
He
to
is.
Ryan Neals and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. But listen, at the end of the day, Todd Bowles made the idea 4th and 8. We're going for it. Todd Bowles' decision ultimately whether Mike Evans was going to go get that record or not, right? Todd Bowles, an old guy, defensive guy, let's try to win. He was on the forefront of, no, we're getting Mike that record, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have to be very, very careful when it comes to like, all right, is Todd really getting the most out of this defense? Look at his linebacking core. I mean, you could argue it's one of the worst linebacking cores in all of football. I mean, Levante David, and I know I know Scott was talking about it, like his playing coverage, his tackling in space. Like at times this year, it hasn't been great. You and I both know KJ Britt's not the answer. You and I both know that JJ Russell is a good special teamer, but not a good linebacker. You're shooting up guys like Ryan Neal. Your outside pass rush, the drafting of a guy like Chris Braswell, that hasn't paid dividends this year. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, like, is that people could say like, all right, it's Todd Bowles' fault for not putting those guys in a position to be able to rush the passer. Well, all right. Well, you're also getting guys like Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey performing to their level, if not exceeding their level of their elite draft status, where they're Pro Bowlers or fringe Pro Bowlers. So Todd doesn't get any credit for that. I can't believe I'm defending the guy because I was one of the only people when they gave him the job. Like, bro, I saw this story with the Jets. Half my family are Jets fans. You know this. But I got to be honest, Matt. Like, I don't see the same Todd Bowles that I saw with the Jets when there was good players on that defense and it was crumbling even when they were relatively healthy. And I see this team where Antoine Winfield Jr. is banged up. You got other guys dealing with injuries. Kalijah was injured earlier on this year, and they somehow find a way to keep it all together. If they put some of those resources into the linebacker position, maybe get an outside pass rusher to go along with some of the guys they already have. Like, I think this defense can get back to being one of the better ones because nobody was saying his defense sucked a couple of years ago when they had Shaq Barrett in his full complement and Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul and a rookie Devin White. Nobody at that time was saying that Todd Bowles and his defense was antiquated.
I actually brought that up the other day on our podcast. I was saying, like, there's no doubt, like, this year the offense has been the one to kind of carry the team more than the defense. But I was like, we're quick to forget that, you know, like Tom Brady's last season, the last time the Bucs had beaten the Saints at Raymond James Stadium up until Sunday was that Monday night game where everyone remembers it as Tom Brady had this great drive at the end of the game, and Kate Otten, I believe, scored the game-winning touchdown. It might have been Keyshawn Vaughn. People forget that game was 17-16, and the Bucs offense is doing nothing the entire game, and the Bucs defense saved the day. There were many times in 2022, and even last year, at least at the beginning of the season, once the offense was still trying to, you know, figure out the system and everything like that, the defense was the one winning the games for the Bucs. It wasn't the offense. And people are quick to kind of forget that when you look at, oh, he's a defensive coach and things, things aren't working out, so we got to get rid of him. I think, you know, comparing the Jets and the Bucs team, I still think by far the Bucs have had much more talent that Bowles can work with than what he had with the Jets. Now, injuries obviously and stuff obviously play a big factor. So there's a lot to collect when it comes into this. Like, you watch the Saints game and you're like, how on earth did the defense allow the Saints to get that field goal right before the second quarter ended? Like, you know, it was dink and dunk out of bounds. It's the same play 10 times in a row, and that frustrates you and it annoys you, and you're like, what are you doing, Todd Bowles? But at the same time, I think you're right. Todd Bowles doesn't get enough credit for the behind-the-scenes things, the intangibles, getting the best out of his players, defending his players. And, you know, everyone likes when Bruce Arians calls out every single guy, and that's just not Todd's style. And for whatever reason, it's kind of been a detriment to him a little bit. He likes to be calm on the sideline so no one else panics. And, yeah, we don't know what it would look like with Liam Cohen in that situation. We have seen it with Todd Bowles, and guys have stuck together. Now, is that Bowles specifically? Is that just the caliber of players that they have in this locker room? They're all ready to band together when the going gets tough. It's one of those things you don't really know until you're actually in it. So I like Todd Bowles a lot. I respect him. He's a good man. Sometimes he gets kind of a raw deal, just a little bit, and all he could do is just keep winning, and that's the best way to keep his job.
Yeah, you got that right, man. I think it's everybody. When you talk about the character, and you know this, like, this is part of the reason why a team like the Lightning has been so revered over the last decade, is because it's one voice. It's Vinnick and Yzerman, Brisebois, Cooper, Stamkos, Hedman. Like, it's one voice down the line. There's no dissension. There's no bitching and moaning when things go wrong. There's a head coach and a general manager and owner that doesn't freak out, and they're calm, cool, and collected. I mean, we're very lucky in the Tampa Bay area to have three.
Yeah.
When you look at Kevin Cash, you look at John Cooper, and you look at Todd Bowles, where they could go on some losing streaks, and they just don't panic. And I think there's a lot to be said with that when you look across the National Football League, and guys are getting fired after 1 year because they don't make adjustments. They don't make halftime adjustments like we see from Todd, and they freak out when things don't go well. They panic and they lose their identity. So the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and I can't believe I'm defending him as vociferously as I have been. But I think it's one of those. You look at what happened with Mike Evans, and you look at how everybody was on board, and you look at how happy everybody was. I mean, that's leadership, and Todd Bowles is part of that leadership group. And I'm worried that if he's not brought back because people are making rash decisions, that it could hurt them in the long run. All right, before I let you go, what's your prediction? Where do you see? How do you see this game turning out on Sunday night?
I love the over in this game. I think both offenses are going to absolutely thrive. Remember, the Bucs scored over. What did they score? 37 points in that season opener against Washington, and yes, they have improved since then. But even in that first game, the running game wasn't what it is now. So I think the Bucs can really lean on that running game, keep Jaden Daniels off the field. Their passing game is going to be pretty stellar. I love Jaden Daniels. He's so much fun to watch. They don't turn the ball over a ton, but he does make a couple of mistaken throws in each game. Sometimes he'll turn the ball over in the red zone. Neither of these defenses get turnovers. They both only have 7 interceptions on the season, but I don't know, crazy enough, I just think like one big play by Todd Bowles and the Bucs defense may be the difference. So I think it's going to be high scoring. I'm going to take the Bucs to win, though I don't feel majorly confident about it. But let's remember, Todd Bowles had a trick up his sleeve last year in that game against the Eagles. He moved Zion McCollum to safety. They did a much different look than that first matchup against the Eagles. I think that's going to be the case for this game against the Commanders. It's going to be mostly the offense, but the defense has one moment that you could point to and say that helped the Bucs win the game. I don't think it's going to – Bucs fans are going to be holding their breath the whole time, but they're going to win and they're going to have another playoff game.
Matt, I am with you because I really, truly believe that for you to be as successful as Jaden Daniels has been in his rookie season, you have to be resilient. You have to be able to kind of snap and release, and just if you make a mistake, you got to move on, and you can't let it snowball. But in the postseason, it comes down to moments and it comes down to the fine margins. And I truly believe that there's going to be one play where he tries to do just a little bit too much, whether it's trying to force a close throw, whether it's trying to extend a play that he should have either thrown the ball away or got down and he fumbles. I think that is going to be the difference in the contest. It's going to be one play where Todd Bowles and his defense comes up with that ever elusive turnover that we've been waiting for all year long. And that's going to prove to be the differentiation in this game on Sunday. Matty4_Matera. Check out all of his great stuff over at pewterreport.com. Matt, you are the man. I appreciate you, brother. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you again soon.
You're the best, Jay. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.
All right, pal. You too. Matt Matera, pewterreport.com. Great job, as always. My guy, Ren. What's going on, pal? I'd be interested in seeing what the Bucs defense points per game against playoff teams as the head coach. Let's just look at the games this year against playoff teams for this Buccaneer squad. First game against the Commanders, 37-20, so only 20 given up there. Next game in Detroit against the Lions, they win that game, only giving up 16 points. They lose to the Broncos 26-7. Then they beat the Eagles 33-16. Next playoff game, or next game against playoff team, the Ravens, they lost that one 41-31. We know that was tough. They lose to the Chiefs in KC 30-24 in overtime. Next game against a playoff team, the Chargers game in LA, they beat them 40-17, and that was the last time that they played a playoff team. So I know there's a lot of people out there that you're looking at this Bucs squad, and there's people that are going to slight them because of their division. Oh, the division sucks. I'm just look at some of the teams that they've beaten, though. They've beaten the Commanders. They've beaten the Lions. They've beaten the Eagles, right? They've beaten the Chargers. They've beaten 4 playoff teams. Right. And it's not like I get it. None of those playoff teams were in the division, but they lost both games to the Falcons. right? So, I mean, that's a bad matchup for them, but they won 4 games outside of their division to teams that are going to be in the playoffs. So I think that doesn't get brought up nearly enough when it comes to what this Buccaneers team and what Todd Bowles and this defense is all about. They need to get more respect from you as a fan base. And I think Todd Bowles deserves some too. Again, do I think he's the top 5 coach in the league? Probably not. Top 10? Maybe. And I think he's a lot better than a lot of people are giving him credit for. Because you look at what I don't agree with some people that are saying about the talent on the defense. I don't think there's much talent there at the linebacker spot. You're talking about the heartbeat of your defense. Washington's going to be rolling Bobby Wagner out there. I know he's getting up there in years, just like Levante David, but Frankie Luvo's a good player. They've had a good defensive line for a long time. The Buccaneers have a good interior. What about help on the outside? Great to see Yaya as a defensive player of the week, but I still think you can see more. People were thinking he could be a 15-sack guy going into this season. We didn't see that. But if he's peaking at the right time, and maybe you get contributions from JTS and Nelson and Chris Braswell and Shaq Barrett, that would be fantastic. All right. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok. I am everywhere talking all things sports here with you, whether it's here in the Tampa Bay area or abroad. Like and subscribe on YouTube. And you see how the show has kind of been formulated. We're going to do our local stuff. We're going to take a look at the other side. We're going to take a look at the opponents, whether it's a Chris Russell in Washington. Nick Cattle's joined us today. The Lightning play the Bruins tomorrow, but also one of the big stories in the NFL, looking at the New England Patriots. So it's not just going to be local. We're going to take a look around the country as well and give you some insight into the biggest stories of the sports world. Tomorrow at 12:15, we're going to be joined by USF head men's basketball coach Ben Fletcher. And after what we found out today about the awards given posthumously to Amir Abdur Rahim, I couldn't think of a better time to have Coach Fletch on. A big thank you again to all of our guests today. Chris Russell for joining us from up there, Team 980 there in the nation's capital. 12:30, Nick Cowles, the Nick Cowles Show. Go check him out. Erik Erlendsson, lightinginsider.com, joining us every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And then, of course, Matt Matera from Pewter Report at 1:30. Follow me on all social media platforms at Recher. I'm going to go take a 10-minute like cat nap, and then I'm going to get out and start pumping out content, pumping out videos. Share these videos, like them, comment on them. Let's keep the interaction going. I'm on Spotify now as well. Go check me out on Spotify. If you have Spotify, I don't even really know how Spotify works, but go look up the Recher podcast. Let me know what you think. I'm trying to get on Apple Music, iTunes by the end of the day. I'm moving. I'm grooving. 2025 is going to be my year. I hope it's going to be your year as well. Enjoy your Wednesday night. Stay warm here in the Tampa Bay area, and we'll see you tomorrow right here at noon on the Recher podcast. I'm gone.